it's a little off from my previous video. I do want to talk about AI art. Now, I just did a class that we mostly talked about all AI, if AI is art, and then how technology and art are made. And as I'm trying to go through my school and my classes, which is why I'm making these videos to try to get more able to talk to people in front of and explain what's in my head versus what I know and explain it to an audience. Now, if we're going to go with art, specifically technology and AI art, is AI art a thing? So if we think about, oh, I have blue and red. So if we're gonna go, I'll do blue for what we traditionally know as art and red as like an AI or technology versus art. If art is, according to Google, a visual object or experience consciously created through an expression of skill or imagination, and then I guess AR, well, that's the problem, right? Because you have, oh, check. I'm gonna just write it. So my tech art would be, I would consider computer art, photography, video, and now adding AI. And in the traditional art, I would consider it, you know, what am I thinking? Like statues, drawings, paintings, um, we got sculptures, art, sculptures, drawing, painting. What else would be what I consider like a traditional artwork? Because now it's really hard to decide what art is and how we establish and who establishes its art. Like I talked about in one of my other videos about Egyptian art, I mostly talked about one person, and I will eventually hopefully get into adding more specific art pieces. It's not really art, it's culture, because their culture was based on doing a lot of these things that we now consider and put into our art exhibits, and specifically like museums. And those are sculptures, even the hieroglyphs with their writing. Um, so where do we draw the line of what's art and what's not art? When you think of like traditional painting, for example, they are done by hand. They have a lot of skill and other aspects to a painting itself. When you think of like AI art, you can mix AI art into drawings, which I put up a PowerPoint I did for my class. I don't know when that's going to come up, but I specifically made that PowerPoint for that specific class. I'm not saying AI art is either, I'm not really for nor against it. I'm more wondering exactly the definition of how art is going to be perceived. When you think about the technology art, a lot of people still don't think that the technology art is art because it's not physically done by hand, but it is done creatively. Now, specifically with AI art, it's done by adding other people's art into one full art cohesive collection. So I have no idea if they are art or not. So when we look at something like this, it's just a cover. Actually, I kind of like this book. It's very artistic and not what I was using for my Egyptian videos that I'm going to be making, I guess. But it does have, it's not a real story, but it does have all like the hieroglyphs and how you can read in like a pirate, like a fake papyrus and everything like that. But not the point. This book was made in, so it doesn't have, I believe it doesn't have AI art. Um, and whoever made it, okay, they don't have one of those insert pages that tell me if how, when, or where it was made, but I'm gonna just show you the back. So there were three different sets by these people, but when I go into AI art, that can be used everywhere. It's very getting more common and common now. This book specifically, someone I bet had done that as art. They created it for this cover. Oh, I might make videos on certain covers of books that I like and didn't like, because sometimes I bought the books just specifically because I like the cover art, and some I didn't even read, but some I did read specifically because I like the art. So I'll probably make some videos on those, because for me, book art, book cover art is very intriguing. Uh, but someone designed it. But most likely, especially all, not all the drawings in this book, this book looks like it was probably hand drawn. Like this specific looked like it was probably hand drawn, because it kind of looks, at least on here, more hand drawn. But I do have some books that are, or in general, when they have been made by the computer. And some people don't think computer art in general is art. But if we're going with the definition of art, it's still creative and expressing yourself. So when you design on like Photoshop or Illustrator, you are still generally using your mind making the art and putting it just computer wise. It's just, and even some computer generated art um use like the drawing pads. So it's not even at that point not being drawn, it's just also being edited on a computer. So where is the line of what makes art art and what makes it not art? Um, where was I? Oh, right. So when you're thinking about computer art, some computer art can be hand drawn. It's just hand drawn back onto the computer, because you're using a certain pad that's making the lines and then taking the brushes in that illustrator, for example, and making the brushes, and it makes a lot of the time more accurately done. Video and video and photography are also not technically done by hand. So we can say that, are those not art? So is all photography not art anymore because it's not made by hand, but it's being creatively done? And even specific um, photographers who are in, like, again, museums, they even said that sometimes they don't see what they make. They have like edited or made the background itself into the photo, that made a new photo, if that makes sense. Like they edited in real time the photo. And same for video. Some videos can be made artistically, and some are just like, I guess this, just me talking to you, which I guess could be a creative content if that's what you're looking for, or if you're just trying to find the fact that you are being videoed. I know that doesn't make sense. But realistically, I'm not doing it by hand. I'm just talking to my computer, and you're just on whatever you are on watching it. So when I go into AI art, when they talk about the fact that AI will add other artistic works and put it into one artwork, well, there's some people who are even taking that, and like I said in my other video, I made a quick one of my paintings. I think I did like a watercolor painting, and then put that onto Photoshop, and then took AI art and put that on top of what I already painted, to add even more dimension into that one specific artwork. That will then be me and AI, and we both, me and AI, creatively made one new artwork versus just taking mine and just taking theirs. I collaborated them. So, but that was also in a creative concept. So it's kind of like, where does AI end and the art begins? And who is it going to affect the most? And can you even tell that it's AI? Because sometimes you can tell it's fully AI art. Sometimes you can tell it's enhanced and edited by a human AI art, where some humans are taking AI and creating completely new art aspects, artistic takes on whatever AI has generated for them. So it's kind of like, is it going to be every new thing we get, it's going to be told it's not art until it becomes art? Like, statues, if you want to kind of go, you know what? Yeah. Let's go kind of with like the Egyptian, right? Egyptians made statues of generally like their pharaohs. And those were put in front of like temples and stuff. It wasn't really art, it was more telling you who's the temple for. They made statues of their gods, they made statues of X, Y, and Z for where you're going and who they want to have promoted. I guess that's a good word. So now statues are art, whereas before it was, like I said, that one specifically, but same for like Greeks and Romans and everywhere else actually who had statues, which basically everybody. Um, we consider them art, but they weren't really art; they were their culture, which is why sometimes is art just always going to be culture? That's where I'm always confused. So if we're gonna go to the traditional stance, the statues were the cultures. Drawings have usually always been art, but again, it could be charts, it could be you could like draw your river charts, and with those river charts wouldn't have been art. It would be hand drawn and it would be hand mapped, but they weren't art. But you, at this point, you do have a lot of drawings art. Same for paintings. Paintings, I feel, have always been art. Again, I could be wrong. Comment if I'm wrong. If paintings, not like wall cave paintings, like not those types of paintings, again, those would be cultured and not art. But again, today we consider them art. So it's really confusing on how we actually distinguish what art is versus, I guess, just cultural art. Paintings are usually done by hand, and so that's another thing too. When you decide paintings, they have oil, they have acrylics, they have watercolors, they have, actually no, I there might be another one, but let's just go for like oil to acrylics. It's still done by hand and it's still art. Most of the art, old art, say like Victorian era, they're done by oil. Um, with the oils, they eventually at some point, I think like during the 1800s, 1900s, maybe the more in like industrial revolution kind of style, I think they started to make more like paint, like artificial paint, not paint by making specific colors using the earth and making those colors. So if we're gonna go painting, and then we kind of got photography, and at one point, again, photography wasn't art, but now it's art. Same for videos. You can have artistic videos, and when cameras came around, you got photos. Once you started having photos of people, like person to person could have photos, and then they started making photography art. They started making art after the photography. Same for videos. Once videos became a thing, like all TVs, excuse me, they have been making, they made videos and then they made artistic interpretation videos. And even here, if we're going to say like the Maryland everybody knows the Warhol. That's not painted. That's photographs that were taken and made like it was like screen pressed in. So he didn't do it by hand, but he made it very artistically a collage. And that's art. So then we get video. But now people are generally saying computer art that's hand done, like computer art that we see literally everywhere at this point. It's pretty much mostly like all marketing and everything will use more computer art. So now we have marketing computer art. Again, once computers came around, we then got computer art. Now it's just kind of the same thing. Eventually, so it's the newest thing going to make AI be able to be art because it's going to change even how that will be done. Because now it seems like most people are like, okay, computer art is art because you're doing it by like each person individually is making something on the computer, even though it's a very artistic take, even though the computer could be doing most of the work. And AI is not art. So it seems like every new technology we get, every new enhancement of the just anything, every new enhancement, eventually art will be made out of that. And what and who establishes if it's art or not is where I'm a little confused on because it seems like, for example, I mean, it's really bad. It's not good. But I made a little statue of a bad bald. And yes, he even has a little hat that he can remove. That might not be art to almost anybody else. I'm proud of it because it was the first time I ever used clay. And so I just used air dry clay and painted it. It's not great, but people might think it's art just because it's made from clay. But I have better art made from my computer. Um, I just have been doing computer art for a while. I was in a computer shop and everything. So it's just kind of interesting to see where each new technology has started to adapt into becoming able to be listed as art versus where it wasn't considered art prior because it's not being hand drawn like we're used to. My other aspect in AI art that people are upset about is the fact that AI takes from artists and creates a new art piece and doesn't give credit to the original artist. My thing on that is when do we credit other artists? For example, Van Gogh has a lot of inspiration from the Japanese, and I believe it's Japanese, but he also has a lot of art. They're not the only ones. A lot of like Monet took inspiration from, I actually also think Japan could be China. Don't quote me on that. Anyway, the point is, a lot of artists that are straight up like what we know and love of traditional or main artists that everybody knows, like Van Gogh. Everybody knows Van Gogh or the Starry Night. If they don't know his name, they know his one of his most, or probably the most famous painting he has is the Starry Night. But he has also even said that he took inspiration for some of his work because of X, Y, and Z. And a lot of other artists have said they took inspiration from X, Y, and Z. Where does that inspiration get brought over? If we're saying AI is not art because it's taking in art or inspiration art because it ends up changing it to its own in a way, art, they take a bunch of art and make one like art. It's like if you're gonna take like if you ask for AI to make a cake, it's gonna make a cake, but it's gonna have all the different designs from other collections of what an cake artist had made and made cake out of it. Is it when we talk about that, is it just inspiration or is it full on taking the art from that person and making it new? Which is why, again, I'm so confused on if I agree if AI art is art. It has a lot of factors that it could be, in fact, AI art, not a thing. AI is art is the worst. And then it has another aspect of, but it technically is art. Let me know. Let me know in the comments.